Okay, so I really appreciate you all being here with me tonight. What I'm going to do is go through a really short PowerPoint presentation where I go over all the details and requirements in order to get credit for your internship, get it registered, pass your internship, because since it's for a grade, you want to make sure that you pass. And we'll go from there. And then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. But I think that most everything that you need will be in the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, if I can get my browser back to where I need it to be. And we will go through the PowerPoint presentation. So again, welcome tonight. We appreciate you being here. So during our presentation tonight, we are going to go over a few things. I'm going to move that because I think that it's hidden. And got to admit somebody. We're going to go over the process of academic internships for credit, which is not the same in other places as it is out of college. So we need to make sure you know what you're doing, how to search and find internships if you're looking, the registration process on Bannerweb and with the paperwork, what paperwork is required for your internship in order to get credit. And it's a little bit different if it's virtual versus face-to-face. And then how to frame your internship as a learning experience in order to actually earn the academic credit for it. Because just because you've done the work doesn't necessarily mean that you have learned anything. So there are ways that we have you track what you're doing and do some written assignments so that you can verify and validate what you've learned and actually plan ahead, just like professors plan their goals for students taking a class. So what is an internship first? There are a lot of different definitions for internships, and you don't need to worry about what this company or that company calls an internship. What you want to do is look at what is required for credit from PC. And there are 4 basic things that we're going to go over tonight. So if you're in the process of searching for an internship, particularly in business, you may want to talk with me about that strategy of how to approach the search rather than just going to someone and saying, I'm looking for an internship, because they may have a different definition from what PC does. And they may think they don't have an internship available when in actuality, something that they offer would work for internship credit at PC. So what does PC require for credit? It's required that it be registered in advance of completion, both through Bannerweb and the forms that we'll go over tonight. You can't go back and get credit for an internship experience that you already did, because you've got to do some reflective writing during the internship that actually addresses what's going on and how it ties to your career, or how it ties to your decisions about your career or your future. So you can't go back and do that retroactively or change how you behave in your internship based on anything that you've written and reflected and discussed if it's all already in the past. So it does need to be registered in advance and planned, rather than saying, oh, I did this great experience last summer, let me get credit for it. It requires reflection on the work and the training completing. So those will be journals, and I will send out a syllabus which has the written assignments on it for all interns. And then you're going to be working with the faculty member who will grade your internship on a pass-fail basis. You'll work with them to determine if there's any changes in the due dates or the content of those journals, or any specific changes in what you're writing about. Each credit hour of internship requires 42 contact hours of doing the work, and you'll get a blank timesheet you can track that on. Or if you're in a paid job, you can use your time card that you use for your job to track those hours. You can just cover up your personal ID, like social security number and hourly wages or anything like that. But you will need to document 42 hours for each credit hour that you register. Next semester is exactly 14 weeks long. Usually there's like 15 weeks, and so there's a little bit of leeway. 14 weeks at 3 hours per week is exactly 42 hours. So I'm going to strongly encourage everyone to do around 5 hours a week, just in case you have to quarantine. We had a couple of people who have to quarantine this semester more than once. And so they're really struggling to get the 42 hours they need for each credit hour, because they didn't get ahead of hours early in the semester. And you can do the hours between December and January also. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we meet one-on-one, and I'll address it later in our presentation. And the last thing is that you do have to have measurable learning goals that you can demonstrate the outcomes in your final paper or project. So we'll look at each of those requirements in a little bit of detail right now. Finding an internship. Several of you mentioned that you already have one lined up, either ROTC or working with a faculty member on campus. Some people want to work with me to find something near campus. Some of you might want to try to do it during December, January back home. Medical, that's a little bit more challenging, but right now anything medical is challenging. So we'll talk about that when we're talking one-on-one a little bit. Some of you want to do the search yourself, but you don't know how to search, and our office can help you with that search process. So career and professional development is available to help. Any questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to go ahead on the finding the internship about a couple of places that you can find them. Nonprofits in the area love to have students do internships. So if you're not sure what you want to do and you're using this as a way to explore, I can help you to look at some nonprofits in the area. Business settings, I had one come in this weekend. It's a paid internship that can start probably over the break. It's virtual. And so if you are a business major who's interested in media and marketing or HR, this might be a good fit for you. But there are jobs posted on the Tartan network that can be used for internships. Medical and allied health settings, we do have affiliation contracts with several hospital systems, but because of this long break, we're going to try to help students, if they can get experience back home, to use that for registered credit. Simply because maybe it would be easier when there are not as many students looking during that break than it would be during the school semester. We still have some limitations on face-to-face placements. And if you don't absolutely need face-to-face in a clinical setting for spring semester, it might be easier to get better experience after next summer, when we hope that there's a vaccine and this COVID situation has made healthcare a little bit friendlier to students again. I don't think anybody mentioned law, but we have students do internships in law settings, government, public administration, that's opportunities. Any questions about finding or the types of locations that are available? Y'all are a quiet group to be as many people as you are. Are you there? Somebody say hello.
Hello.
We're here.
We're here.
Okay, I was just making sure that I hadn't lost everybody, because this is the first time I've done the presentation that nobody had questions on the two stops. So just wanted to make sure.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would Joseph go on the nonprofits?
I'm sorry, with the nonprofits?
Yeah.
So there are lots of different types. There's the United Way of Lawrence County, who has an intern with them this semester. This particular semester it has been media, but in the past they've also done event planning, helping with economic development in the community, helping people. There's a tax program to file tax returns for people in low income, so that's one. A business nonprofit would be the Chamber of Commerce. The Lawrence County Safe Home, who help victims of abuse, is another possibility. A lot of churches are nonprofits that also have students coming to intern. The South Carolina Empowerment Center in Lawrence is a great nonprofit working with youth, and would be a good setting for anyone interested in social work. Any other questions about nonprofits? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, great. And we're trying to get in touch with DHEC and the Department of Social Services to see if students can intern with them in the spring. Sometimes they allow it and sometimes it's harder to get in, so I'm working with them right now. Okay, the part one is registration on Banner Web. Show of hands, if at the bottom of the screen you should have a button called reactions. Show of hands, how many of you have already registered on Banner Web?
Are you asking for an internship or just in general for our classes next year?
For your internship. Okay, I see mostly show of hands. Yes.
Yes.
So, good. So if you have not already registered, you will want to go to Banner Web in the discipline, like the subject area that you want your internship to be in. Usually that's going to be your major, but not always. For instance, the person who is wanting to do a ROTC internship, military science is not a major, it's a minor. So you would go to that and you would look under the course listings and find the CRN for the number of credit hours. Like here are the accounting ones, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you wanted a 3-hour accounting internship, you would use that CRN. So you go ahead and register on Banner Web first. During the summer, there's a little bit different process, but I'm talking primarily about spring right now. So if anyone needs help on summer, now would be the time to ask me about that note that I have about COLS 444. Okay. COLS is an option during spring too, but it would not be for 0 credit hours. If what you're wanting to do doesn't really tie to a specific field of study, then COLS is for interdisciplinary type internships. So as I said, that's where you would find the CRN and you'll put it in when you register. Any questions on the Banner Web portion of registration? Okay, part 2 of registration requires you to do some paperwork. For everyone, there's going to be a form, and let me see if I can put this into chat now, if it will let me, and I might have to wait until after I stop sharing. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second. For some reason, it's not letting me share a document right now. It may be because there's so many people. I will email out the documents that you need. So I'm going to go back to sharing our PowerPoint. Did I lose somebody? Okay, the registration form is how it ties to your registration in Banner Web. That's where you put the details about who your faculty advisor is, where you're going to do your internship, and then on the back you put what you'll be doing, your responsibilities, and what you want to learn, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail further on. If it's a face-to-face internship, there's 2 more forms you're going to need, which are additional because of COVID-19. The first of those is the statement of responsibility and assumption of risk. And you and your employer will both have to sign that. And there's a place for them to initial on the first page, a couple of different spots. And if you're in healthcare, one on the second page. But then you have to initial each of those spots just to show that the understanding of the responsibilities and the liabilities and so forth of working in a setting. The other one is a waiver, because the policy is for internships to be virtual this academic year. So because you're wanting to do a face-to-face internship, which most of our fall interns were face-to-face, we just want a document on record that you and your advisor have talked about your reason for wanting to do an internship this face-to-face. So I will send those out by email to everyone who's registered for this event on the Tartan Network. Any questions though about the paperwork, aside from needing copies of it?
When is that paperwork due if we want to do an internship in the spring?
If you want to do it in spring term, we would need to have it before you start your internship. But we'll be working throughout the winter break, except for the 2 weeks right at Christmas. So we can email back and forth. And that brings up a great question. You don't have to physically go and get everybody to sign off on it. You can bring the copies to my office on Spring's first floor, and I can scan it in after you've filled it out and signed it, and send it by email to faculty, to employers, or whoever else needs to approve it. That'll save you a lot of running around trying to find people, especially when they're trying not to be found.
Thank you.
And especially when you're not on campus. Any other questions on the paperwork? Okay, the learning goals are on side 2 of that registration confirmation form. This is what most students have the most trouble with. Whenever a faculty member is writing a new curriculum or new course, they have to set goals for students to learn by the end of the semester. So I'm going to ask you all for a little bit of feedback here as we go through this. And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to kind of respond in a way that helps you understand a little bit better the levels of learning. What is the color in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide?
Red.
Red. So you were identifying or naming the color red. That's your basic level of remembering learning objective. If you think back to being 4 or 5 years old and in kindergarten, children are learning to identify their colors. What if I were to say, what happens if you mix red with yellow? Anyone?
You get orange.
Right. Red and yellow together, mixed together to make orange. So you're understanding and making sense of the information and interpreting it and explaining it in a little bit different way. That's something that you might do in first grade. Learn there's difference between primary and secondary colors. If you were in, say, third grade and you were asked to apply it and you were said, okay, you don't have any orange paint. I need you to make some orange paint. How would you go about doing that? You would take your red paint and your yellow paint and you would mix it together, right, to get the shade of orange that you wanted. So that's an application level. We're still talking about red, but we've gone up in levels of learning. When you get to college, there are art majors who are still creating using the color red. They're evaluating which shade of red is appropriate for ladybugs compared to roses. They're analyzing the influence that red might have on the psychiatric or psychological response of someone in a room that's painted with a lot of red trim compared to a room with a lot of blue trim. So they're still studying red, but at a much higher level of understanding. What I want you to think about as you're writing your own learning goals is, where are you in the learning process? Are you starting something new? Like you've never been in a healthcare setting before, but you want to go to pharmacy school? You might be memorizing the name of drugs. Or if it's same true in medical school, you might be memorizing the vocabulary. Remembering is an appropriate learning goal. But say you're already a certified nursing assistant, you would want to be applying that knowledge and evaluating patient situations. And so your learning goals would need to be written at a higher level. We'll work one-on-one, but also you can work with the faculty one-on-one to develop learning goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-specific and appropriate for you. It can be related to skills or knowledge. So learning to use a software system or a particular piece of equipment would be a skill. Being able to understand a concept is knowledge. So it can be either category, and it needs to connect to the academic program of study that it's registered for. Any questions on learning goals? Okay, the last slide, and as I said, this is a very short PowerPoint presentation. The last slide is just the contact information for our staff. I'm associate director. There's Kendall, who is assistant director. She and I are both working with students to help search for internships, but also to get your resume ready to apply for them. Kim Lane is also in our office. She's the director. If you're a senior in particular wanting to search for a job for after graduation, she would be a great person to meet with. And then Melanie Cash works in our office in the afternoons. And so if you drop paperwork off in the afternoons, she might be able to make sure that I get it and that sort of thing. So I'm going to stop the share now. And the rest of our time together is just for us to chat a little bit about your own goals and interest for internships and questions that you still have for how you're going to do your internship.
I have a question.
Sure, sure.
So how does it work if you were to take something over the summer? I know this is mainly for spring, but if I was looking at taking a 1-hour internship over the summer, would you still pay the school because it counts as 1 credit hour? Or how does that work for over the summer?
That's a great question. It used to be based on the number of credit hours. but that meant a lot of students were doing a lot of good, solid work over the summer, and they were paying for 1 credit because they didn't want to pay more for 2, 3, 4 credit hours. and
Right.
such.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, we appealed from our office directly up to the leadership team and got approval to make it a fee-based process for summer school, because you do still have a faculty member who's got to grade your written assignments and whatnot. And they are pass-fail. It's not graded on an alphanumeric level. But instead of paying by the credit hour, summer internships, 1 to 4 credit hours is $500 flat fee.
Okay.
5 or 6 credit hours is $750. And if you happen to be someone who is on a Pell Grant,
Mm-hmm.
6 hours of summer school is considered full-time. And if you have Pell Grant funding, that will cover, it can sometimes cover the full cost of 6 hours or more of summer school. So if you were
Okay.
doing a full-time job all summer, you could easily get 42 times 6 or 250, what is that, 256, 252, sorry, actual contact hours, and earn 6 hours of credit, and might not have to pay anything out of pocket if you're a Pell Grant eligible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, I gotta go take a test here at 8. So,
Okay, that's fine. Did you have any questions, or you can drop them in an email to me later if you did?
nope, I'm good. I already signed up for meeting time. So,
Perfect, perfect.
All right, bye.
Thanks. Other questions? I'm going to stop our recording because I believe that's all that those who will be watching the video later would be covering that PowerPoint. But I'm going to stop the recording, and